The sun hung low over the Wyoming plains like a weary eye, painting the dust gold and red. It was late autumn in 1887, and the wind carried the bite of coming winter. In the small settlement of Willow Creek, little more than a church, a general store, a saloon, and a handful of weathered cabins, 7 children stood in a silent row beside the dirt road that led out of town. They were forgotten. Not lost, exactly. Forgotten. Their mother, Eliza Hawthorne, had died 2 months earlier of fever. Their father had been gone longer, killed in a mining accident up in the Black Hills when the oldest was only 9. The children ranged from 14-year-old Thomas down to little Grace, who was barely 4. After the funeral, the townsfolk had fed them scraps for a while, but winter was coming, and mercy has limits when mouths are many and supplies are few. The church ladies had tried. They'd placed notices in the stagecoach stops and whispered to travelers, 7 good children. Hard workers. Need a home. But no one came. No one wanted 7. 1 or 2, maybe. 7 was a burden too heavy for most. So they waited. Every afternoon after chores, they lined up along the road in their patched clothes, heads down, hands clasped. Silent. Hoping someone would stop. Hoping someone would see them. Most wagons rolled past without slowing. Drivers looked away. Children were reminders of hardship, and hardship was everywhere out here. Then came the day the cowboy arrived. His name was Caleb Rowan. Tall, lean, quiet. Dust on his hat, scars on his knuckles, eyes the color of worn denim. He rode a gray mare with a limp and led a pack mule loaded with supplies. He'd been drifting for years, Montana to Colorado, working ranches, breaking horses, never staying long enough to put down roots. People said he'd lost something once. A wife. A child. No one knew for sure. He never spoke of it. Caleb stopped at the general store for coffee and tobacco. As he stepped out onto the porch, he saw them. 7 small figures against the fading light. They didn't look up. They never did anymore. Hope had worn thin. He stood there a long minute, cup in hand, steam rising. Then he walked over, boots soft on the dirt. The oldest, Thomas, finally lifted his chin. His eyes were wary, protective. "Evenin'," Caleb said. His voice was low, gravelly, like stones rolling in a stream. No answer. "You folks waitin' for someone?" Thomas swallowed. "We wait every day." "For what?" "For someone to want us." Caleb looked down the line. Dirty faces. Thin arms. Shoes with holes. Grace clutched a rag doll missing an eye. He crouched slowly so he was eye level with them. "What are your names?" Thomas spoke for them all. "I'm Thomas." "This is Samuel, 12. Then Rose, 10. Jacob, 8. Mary, 6. Benjamin, 5. And Grace, 4. Caleb nodded, taking each name in like it mattered. "You got kin anywhere?" Thomas shook his head. Mama's gone. Pa too. They say we're too many. Caleb stayed quiet a moment. The wind tugged at his coat. Then he asked the question that changed everything. He looked straight at Thomas, but his words carried to them all. If I asked you to come with me, would you trust me enough to try? Silence. Thick as fog. Rose whispered, Where? My place. Up north. Ranch. Small. But there's a roof. Fire. Food. Room for 7 more. Benjamin piped up, voice tiny. You got horses? Some. And cows. And a dog named Rusty who thinks he's people. Grace stepped forward, one small step. She looked up at him with wide eyes. Do you like children? Caleb's throat worked. For the first time in years, something cracked inside him. I used to, he said softly. A long time ago. Lost my way after. But maybe I still do. Thomas studied him. Why us? Nobody else stopped. Caleb looked past them to the empty road. Because I know what it feels like to stand somewhere and feel like the world rode right by. He stood up. I ain't promisin' easy. Winters are hard. Work is long. But I promise you this, if you come, you won't stand on no roadside waitin' anymore. You'll have a place. And you'll have a name that matters. The children looked at each other. Samuel tugged Thomas's sleeve. He don't smell like whiskey. Rose nodded slowly. Mary whispered, he looked at us. Really looked. Grace reached up and slipped her tiny hand into Caleb's big, calloused one. Thomas took a breath. We'll come. Caleb didn't smile wide. Just a small lift at the corner of his mouth. He helped them gather the few things they owned, a blanket, a Bible, a tin cup, the rag doll. He lifted Grace onto the mare in front of him. The others climbed onto the mule or walked beside. They left Willow Creek as the sun dipped below the horizon. The journey north took 4 days. Cold nights. Thin blankets. But Caleb built fires, shared his coat, told quiet stories about the stars. He taught Thomas how to tie a proper knot. Showed Rose how to find dry kindling even when everything looked wet. Sang low lullabies to Grace when she cried for her mama. They arrived at the ranch on the 5th evening. It was modest, a log cabin, a barn half repaired, a corral with 3 horses, a few head of cattle. A dog barked and ran circles. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and old smoke. One big room. A loft. A stove. Empty chairs around a table that had known only one man for too long. Caleb lit lamps. It ain't much yet, he said. But it's yours too, now. That first night, they ate beans and cornbread. Grace fell asleep in Caleb's lap. He didn't move for hours. Days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. They worked together. Thomas helped with the cattle. Samuel chopped wood. Rose cooked simple meals. Jacob and Mary fed the chickens. Benjamin carried water. Grace followed Caleb everywhere, calling him Pa one day without thinking. He didn't correct her. Winter came hard. Blizzards buried the trails. Food ran low. But Caleb hunted, rationed, kept the fire going. When fever took little Benjamin, Caleb sat up all night holding him, whispering he was sorry, that he'd tried. The boy pulled through. Spring brought green. Calves were born. The children laughed more. They planted a small garden. Rose found wildflowers and put them on the table every day. One evening, as the sun set gold over the hills, Caleb sat on the porch steps with all 7 around him. Grace on his knee. Thomas leaning against the post. He looked out at the land they'd started to tame together. "I asked you a question once," he said quietly. "If you trust me." Thomas nodded. "We did." Caleb's voice caught. "I got another one now." He looked at each face, dirty, sun-browned, alive. "Will you let me be your pa?" "Not just for now. For always. Papers and all. So the world knows you're mine. And I'm yours." Tears came then. Not loud. Quiet. The kind that heal. Rose spoke first. "We already think you are." One by one, they nodded. Hugged him. Cried into his shirt. Caleb Rowan, the man who drifted for years, finally stopped moving. He filed the papers in the county seat that summer. 7 children gained a last name, Rowan. Years passed. The ranch grew. More cattle. A bigger barn. A schoolhouse built nearby so the younger ones could learn letters. Thomas became a fine horseman. Rose married a kind blacksmith from town. Samuel took over the herd one day. Jacob became a teacher. Mary opened a dress shop. Benjamin grew strong and funny. Grace, little Grace, became a nurse who never turned away a child in need. And Caleb? He grew old on that porch, watching sunsets, surrounded by grandchildren who called him Grandpa Cal. He never spoke much about the years before. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, he'd sit by the fire and look at the 7 framed drawings on the wall, childish pictures of a cowboy and 7 small figures holding hands. He'd smile, small and private, and whisper, "Thank you for trusting me." Because one question, asked on a dusty road in fading light, had turned forgotten children into a family, and turned a lonely man into a father.